Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. Even the most enigmatic disappearances of people, which leave no trace, eventually find their explanations over time. Those missing either make contact themselves, or the police manage to dig deep enough to uncover the truth and solve the case. Unfortunately, unsolved crimes involving abductions and serious crimes do occur, though they are much rarer. However, sometimes the investigation is just one step away from a breakthrough, but for some reason, the full picture remains elusive. The case of a young Canadian woman named Alicia Ross, who vanished without a trace in the middle of the night from her own bedroom, would likely have remained unsolved. The police were unable to find either a body or any significant evidence, and as a result, the investigation merely stagnated, attempting to stitch together a case against an innocent person who was suspected from the start. It might have ended up that way had the criminal not turned himself in to the police. It's hard to determine whether a sudden onset of conscience or a mental disorder was the cause, though it was probably a combination of both. But let's start from the beginning and dissect this complex story with an unexpected twist. Who was Alicia Ross? Alicia Ross was born on February 8, 1980, in the Canadian city of Markham, in the province of Ontario. There is no information about her biological parents. It is only known that they relinquished their rights to the child, and she was adopted at a few months old by a couple named Marvin and Sharon Ross. Her adoptive parents surrounded her with love and care. They did everything to ensure that their daughter wanted for nothing and could fully develop her talents. When Alicia started school, her adoptive parents decided to divorce, but they maintained a friendly relationship and continued to participate together in their daughter's life. Soon, Sharon remarried, and her new husband, named Julius Forrest, treated the child as if she were his own daughter. The girl did well in school, excelled in drawing, and also had a passion for photography and loved discovering new cities and countries. After finishing school, she spent a year in Australia, where she traveled and enjoyed life before returning home and enrolling in university. In the summer of 2005, the 25-year-old Alicia went on a hiking trip in the mountains with her friends. She loved spending time in nature, away from the hustle and bustle of city life. There, she met a young man named Sean Hine, with whom she began a romantic relationship in early July. He was 4 years her senior. He was already 29 at the time, but the slight age difference did not bother the couple. At that time, Ross still lived in her adoptive parents' home, where she occupied the basement with a separate entrance, thus having her own space and living independently from her parents. On August 16th, the young woman, together with her adoptive mother and their dogs, went for a walk in the park. Alicia appeared happy and shared that she was expecting a promotion at work to the position of senior sales manager in the coming days. She was very proud, as she had been working hard for a long time, and her efforts were finally about to pay off. Additionally, the young woman talked to her mother about her boyfriend Sean, whom she had been dating for just over a month, but seemed deeply in love. Alicia hoped that this romance could develop into something more significant in the future, and expressed a desire to introduce her beau to her adoptive parents by arranging a family dinner. After the walk in the park, the mother headed home, and her daughter went on a date with her beloved, promising not to stay out late because she needed to get up early for work the next day, where her promotion was to be decided. The women said goodbye and went their separate ways. Sharon never saw her daughter alive again, the mysterious disappearance from her own home. That evening, after meeting with Sean, Alicia invited him to her house. They had a great time together, and close to midnight, the young man left for home. Alicia walked him to the gate, which served as a second exit from the yard. They kissed goodbye, and then he left, promising to call her as soon as he got home. Around midnight, as promised, Sean called his girlfriend, but she didn't pick up the phone. He wasn't overly concerned, thinking Alicia had simply fallen asleep since she had to get up early for work. However, the next morning, when he tried to call her again and she still didn't pick up, he became genuinely worried and contacted a mutual acquaintance who worked in the same office with Ross. From her, he learned that Alicia hadn't come to work, and he immediately rushed to her house. On the morning of August 17th, Sharon and Julius were planning to play golf with friends, and they left the house around 10 o'clock. They noticed their daughter's car in the driveway, but thought little of it, assuming a colleague had picked her up. So the couple went about their day. About half an hour later, Sean arrived at the Ross residence, and finding no sign of Alicia there, he called the police to report a person missing. He also immediately contacted Sharon, informing her of the situation. The couple, alarmed by the news, dropped everything and hurried home, where the police were already present by then. Thus, Sean Hine was the first person to notice the girl's disappearance and to inform the authorities. Moreover, he was the last person to see Alicia alive and well the evening before she vanished. According to him, they had said goodbye at the gate, where his car was parked around midnight, and she hadn't been in touch since then, with her whereabouts unknown. When Sharon and Julius approached the house, law enforcement was already there, inspecting the area and speaking with Sean, who had called them. The young man was visibly nervous and looked distraught. When the mother looked into Alicia's room, she immediately noticed that all her daughter's personal belongings, without which she never left the house, were in their places. Her purse, passport, driver's license, keys, cell phone, as well as her bank cards and cash, were all left in the room, indicating she wouldn't have gone anywhere, let alone left without them. The gate was open but not forced, suggesting that the missing person either let her abductor in herself or willingly left with someone from the yard. In the backyard, the police found some disorder. The lawn and flowers in one spot were trampled as if someone had fallen there. Also, a pair of cigarettes and the right sandal of the girl, one she had been wearing the evening before, were found on the ground, laid out in a straight line. Neither Alicia nor her parents smoked, so the cigarettes didn't belong to them, and Sean claimed he never smoked that particular brand, leaving it unclear to whom they belonged and why they were arranged in such a strange manner. The prime suspect. Sean was almost immediately considered the prime suspect. Firstly, he was noticeably nervous, and his account seemed somewhat confused and disjointed. Secondly, he was the first to report his girlfriend's disappearance to the police, even before speaking with her parents and confirming that they too had not seen her. Thus, he definitely knew she was missing. Additionally, law enforcement found biological traces on the girl's bed, belonging both to her and Sean. Based on this, the investigation speculated that Alicia might have denied Sean intimacy, and he decided to force her, then, trying to cover his tracks, staged her disappearance, which he likely caused by ending her life. When Sean was brought to the station, questioned, and the investigator's theory presented to him, the young man was stunned. He was dismayed to be the prime suspect and swore he would never harm his girlfriend as he loved her. He also admitted that they did indeed have intimate moments that evening, but insisted it was consensual. The missing girl's parents also had nothing bad to say about Sean. He hadn't argued with their daughter, hadn't mistreated her, and she spoke only well of him, their relationship progressing rapidly and quite happily, so much so that Alicia even hoped to have a future with him. Moreover, the Forreses noted that their daughter had no plans or reasons to leave. She was eagerly awaiting a promotion at her beloved job, and being a responsible person, she would never just leave everything behind. But even if some unforeseen circumstances had arisen, she would certainly have informed her parents and definitely would not have left without her documents, money, and phone. The police lacked sufficient evidence or grounds to detain Sean, and so after questioning him at the station, they released him. Nevertheless, law enforcement did not rule him out as a suspect and continued to keep an eye on the young man. Sean himself appeared depressed and very upset. The extensive search effort. The search for the missing woman commenced the day after her disappearance. Initially, a thorough inspection of the home and yard was conducted, and investigators closely examined the surrounding area and interviewed neighbors. However, no one reported hearing or seeing anything suspicious that night. Law enforcement theorized that the woman vanished sometime between midnight, when she said goodbye to Sean, and sunrise, a time when the streets are usually quiet and deserted, making it difficult to find witnesses. Flyers with Alicia's photos were distributed throughout the city, listing phone numbers where people could provide any information about her whereabouts. The story of the missing woman was featured in the news and made headlines in popular publications, generating significant public interest and prompting hundreds of volunteers and concerned citizens to join the search. The police received dozens of calls daily related to the case. Although most information turned out to be false or mistaken, each tip and theory was investigated in the hope of finding any leads. The search area continually expanded, involving more people, and thorough checks were conducted in abandoned buildings, wooded areas, and wastelands. Sean also actively participated in the search efforts, despite still being the prime suspect. Feeling wronged, the young man turned to the media and gave a significant interview, where he shared how deeply he loved Alicia and displayed photos of them looking very happy together. He tearfully pleaded for help in the search, appearing utterly devastated by the situation. The search for Ross became one of the most extensive operations in Ontario's history. Every difficult-to-reach place, ravine, and marshy area was scoured, but no clues, leads, or even hints about the missing woman's location were found. Her parents also appealed to the public through the media, expressing their belief that their daughter was alive but being held against her will somewhere. They implored whoever had their daughter to let her return home unharmed and not to harm her in any way. Sean's unexpected arrest. The police leaned towards the theory that someone Alicia knew personally had abducted and possibly ended her life. This hypothesis was supported by the lack of signs of struggle, no evidence of forced entry, and the gate being left open, but no concrete leads were found. The cigarettes found on the ground bore only a heavily smeared fingerprint, which couldn't be identified. Investigators thoroughly checked Alicia's contacts and reviewed all calls and messages on her phone and email, yet nothing suspicious was uncovered. On the 6th day of the search, the case was officially reclassified as a criminal act, despite the lack of evidence, and Sean remained the prime suspect. Sean lived alone in his own house about 10 miles from Alicia's home. After realizing that public suspicion had intensified following his media appearance, he stopped participating in the search and refused to speak with the press. Investigators interviewed Sean 3 more times, but his story remained consistent. He was then offered a lie detector test, which he refused, convincing the police even more firmly that he was involved in the crime. 2 weeks after the disappearance, Sean was arrested on an unrelated charge. He was taken into custody late at night for driving under the influence and resisting arrest. Speculations arose that he was drowning his guilt in alcohol. Following Sean's arrest, Alicia's parents gave another interview, sharing that they had not personally known the young man and only knew about him through their daughter's accounts. They believed she was happy, but now Sharon considered the possibility that her daughter might have withheld certain details to avoid upsetting them, though she had planned to introduce her boyfriend to her family soon. Police interviewed Sean's neighbors to determine if they had noticed anything unusual recently, such as him disposing of large trash bags, behaving suspiciously, leaving unexpectedly, or cleaning his car. However, no significant information emerged from these inquiries. Detectives were left hoping that Sean might eventually confess to everything. An unexpected turn in the case. About a month after the disappearance of Alicia, the buzz surrounding her case began to fade gradually. The search continued, but it was no longer featured in newspapers or news broadcasts, and the investigation seemed to have hit a dead end. The only option left for law enforcement was to keep pressing Sean, hoping he would crack and confess to everything. Then a completely unexpected twist occurred in the case. On September 20th, 2005, more than a month after Ross disappeared, 31-year-old Daniel Sylvester, who lived nearby, called the police and confessed to ending the girl's life, pointing out where he had hidden her body. It's important to note that this man was never under suspicion, and the police had not considered him at all during their investigation. Initially, it seemed that the man simply craved fame and attention, and thus decided to take responsibility for the most notorious case in recent years. However, all doubts were dispelled when the police found the girl's body at the location he had indicated. Who is Daniel Sylvester? But let's first delve into who this new person of interest is, and why the police hadn't taken an interest in him earlier. Daniel Sylvester was an unemployed recluse living in his mother's house, which was adjacent to the Ross family home. Their properties were separated by overgrown shrubs, forming a virtually impenetrable barrier. Although the criminal and the victim had lived practically their whole lives side by side, they had never interacted before. Alicia had seen Daniel a few times on his property and considered him mentally unwell because of his odd behavior. Indeed, he had had serious socialization issues from an early age, never had friends, was mocked at school, and every attempt at forming relationships ended in complete failure, causing him to harbor a deep resentment towards all women. As a child, girls called him a loser and said they would never associate with someone like him. At the age of 8, Sylvester was diagnosed with socialized behavioral disorder and had been under continuous psychological care, although therapy didn't help much. In his teenage years, he confessed that he dreamt of suddenly attacking a girl and overpowering her. This thought excited him, but specialists were confident that such fantasies would remain just in his imagination. After finishing school, Daniel stopped attending therapy sessions, decided not to continue his education, and became a recluse. He lived in his mother's house, almost completely isolating himself from the outside world. He spent his days sitting in his room, often on adult websites, and occasionally ventured out in the evenings to secretly watch his neighbors, peeping into their windows. He especially enjoyed watching when someone was engaging in lovemaking. This spectacle excited him, yet Daniel remained a virgin well into his 30s, satisfying himself with solitary activities. The neighbors hardly ever saw him, and thus considered him a harmless guy, the mutilated body. Initially, Sylvester claimed that the girl's death was accidental, and he hid the body to avoid punishment. According to him, when he realized the girl showed no signs of life, he placed her in the trunk of his mother's car and drove about 50 miles out of town, hiding the body in a bushy ravine by the side of a country road. 3 weeks later, fearing that the body would be discovered, he moved it in the middle of the night even further away, to a deserted area. The body was found in the place Daniel indicated, thereby dispelling the last doubts about his guilt. However, the condition of the remains indicated that the girl had been dealt with extreme cruelty. The injuries were such that it looked as if she had been hit by a car. An autopsy showed that Alicia had nearly all her ribs broken, her neck, both arms, and also suffered extensive closed cranial trauma with internal bleeding. The exact cause of death could not be determined, but at least 3 injuries were incompatible with life. Forensic experts were shocked, as they had never encountered anything like it before. It was now necessary to clarify all the circumstances and chronology of events of that fateful evening to learn how exactly the girl received such injuries. The full picture and chronology of events. Initially, the convict claimed that he had an argument with his neighbor on a bush-covered path between their homes. At some point during the verbal altercation, she called him a loser, which angered him, and he struck the girl on the head. When she fell, he kicked her several times in the chest. When he realized she was not breathing, he decided to hide the body, and then moved it again when the search area expanded. However, something in his story did not add up. There were missing details and specifics. For instance, it was unclear what Daniel was doing at his neighbor's house at night, why they began arguing, what caused such a brutal beating, and why the evidence found at the scene was laid out in a straight line. Restoring the full picture of events was challenging, but law enforcement managed to do so. That evening, Sylvester went out to spy on his neighbors. He noticed that Alicia's boyfriend had come over, and he approached their house closely. As the couple was being intimate, he watched them from a window. Then he moved back to the bushes, but did not leave. Closer to midnight, the lovers went outside and kissed by the gate, just a couple of feet away from the lurking neighbor. When Sean left, the girl returned to the yard and noticed Daniel. She became very angry, realizing that he had been spying on her and her boyfriend all this time. She started yelling at him, calling him a pervert, and demanded that he leave immediately. Finally, Ross called him a loser, after which she turned around and was about to go back into the house. But this last word acted as a trigger, because that's exactly what other girls had called him in childhood. Sylvester was filled with rage, punched the girl powerfully on the head, and knocked her to the ground. She tried to resist and grabbed her attacker's hair, but he began to choke her. When his grip loosened, Daniel quickly stood up and began kicking Alicia while she lay down. He mostly struck her chest, back, neck, and head. Forensic experts later counted 33 fractures on the victim's body and extensive internal bleeding. When the man realized that his neighbor was dead, he moved her body to his garage, stripped her naked, and then masturbated according to his statement to relieve tension. The examination confirmed that Sylvester did not violate the body. He then put the corpse in the trunk of his mother's car and took it to a secluded place outside the city. Upon returning home, the criminal took a shower, changed clothes, and behaved as if nothing had happened. His clothes, as well as the victim's belongings and the towels he used to clean the crime scene, were packed in trash bags and disposed of. The trial and sentence. The court proceedings for this case began only in April 2007, at which time new details were made public. The defendant confessed that he ended his neighbor's life, but he and his lawyer insisted that it was unintentional. Moreover, the defense demanded a psychiatric evaluation, noting that Daniel was ill and should not be held accountable for his actions, suggesting he be treated in a clinic instead of being incarcerated. However, the prosecution argued that despite his mental illness and issues with anger management, Sylvester acted with full awareness of the consequences of his actions. He mercilessly kicked the girl with full force, knowing that it would likely result in her death. Nevertheless, the ordered psychiatric evaluation confirmed that the defendant could indeed be fully responsible for his actions. Regarding the items found in the backyard, Daniel never confessed to having placed them there, arranged in a straight line. On May 7, 2007, the defendant was found guilty of second-degree crime and sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 16 years. A year later, Canadian singer-songwriter Kathleen Edwards wrote a song titled Alicia Ross, which depicted the events from the young woman's perspective during the last minutes of her life. Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe to my channel. There are many shocking stories ahead of you.